They were the faces of Hollywood's golden age, adored by millions, plastered across magazines, and celebrated as the future of cinema. But behind the dazzling lights, the smiling posters, and the glitter of fame, many of these child stars carried secrets that the world never saw. Some vanished without a trace at the very height of their success. Others were forced out of the spotlight by scandals, heartbreak, or the brutal reality of growing up in an industry that only loved them when they stayed small, cute, and profitable. A few found redemption in unexpected places, while others met endings so tragic you won't believe they were once the brightest stars in Hollywood. From Disney's original Golden Boy to the world's most famous child actress, and even the real-life Dennis the Menace, these are the shocking stories of the child stars who disappeared when the camera stopped rolling. And when it comes to child stars, there's no better place to begin than with the little girl who defined an entire generation. She wasn't just Hollywood's most famous child, she was America's sweetheart. Shirley Temple. With her bouncing curls, dimples, and endless charm, she wasn't just a star, she was a symbol of hope during America's darkest years. In the middle of the Great Depression, audiences packed theaters just to see her sing, dance, and smile. By the age of 7, she was earning more than most adults could ever dream of, $50,000 per film, the equivalent of nearly $1 million today. And that was just the beginning. Her image was everywhere. Dolls, clothing, sheet music, you name it. Shirley Temple's face was on it. She wasn't just an actress, she was an empire, pulling in millions of dollars for the studios and uplifting an entire nation. But here's the harsh truth of Hollywood. Child stars grow up. And once Shirley entered her teenage years, the magic that had carried her career began to fade. Audiences weren't lining up for the older Shirley the way they had for the adorable little girl with curls. The studio that had once built its empire on her back dropped her as soon as she wasn't profitable anymore. By just 22 years old, the world's biggest child star walked away from Hollywood completely. But unlike so many others who spiraled after the spotlight dimmed, Shirley Temple rewrote her own story. She raised a family, entered politics, and went on to serve as a U.S. diplomat. From UN delegate to ambassador in 2 different countries, she proved her worth far beyond the stage and screen. Her life is remembered as one of Hollywood's rare second acts, a child star who fell from fame but rose again in an entirely different arena. But for every Shirley Temple who reinvented herself, there was another child star whose story ended in heartbreak. And no one shows that contrast better than Disney's original golden boy, Bobby Driscoll. If Shirley Temple was Hollywood's brightest light, Bobby Driscoll was Disney's golden child. He wasn't just another actor, he was the very first kid signed under contract by Walt Disney himself. Bobby's voice gave life to Peter Pan, and his face starred in classics like Treasure Island and So Dear to My Heart. By 12 years old, he had an Academy Award and the kind of future most child actors only dreamed of. But Hollywood can be cruel, especially to kids who don't stay picture perfect. As Bobby grew older, his cherubic looks began to change. Acne scarred his once angelic face, and suddenly the studio that had built him up decided he no longer fit the image. Disney dropped him cold. Just like that, the boy who embodied Peter Pan, the child who never grew up, was forced to face the harshest reality of all. He was no longer wanted. Without Disney behind him, Bobby's career collapsed almost overnight. By his teens, roles had dried up. By his 20s, he was deep into heroin, arrests, and dead-end attempts to make a comeback. His parents tried rehabilitation centers, but nothing worked. The boy who once symbolized magic and adventure was now just another Hollywood cautionary tale. The final chapter of Bobby's life was even darker. In 1968, children playing in an abandoned New York building stumbled across the body of a man. With no ID, he was buried in a pauper's grave. 2 years later, fingerprints revealed the heartbreaking truth. It was Bobby Driscoll. Disney's golden boy had died alone at just 31, unrecognized and forgotten by the very world that once adored him. Bobby Driscoll's fall showed how fast Hollywood can turn its back on its own stars. But long before him, another child actor experienced an even harsher betrayal, not from the studios, but from his own family. His name was Jackie Coogan, and his story changed Hollywood forever. Before Disney's golden boy or TV's mischievous pranksters, there was Jackie Coogan, the very first child megastar in Hollywood history. Discovered by Charlie Chaplin at just 7 years old, Jackie became unforgettable as the abandoned boy in Chaplin's masterpiece, The Kid. His performance was raw, emotional, and heartbreaking, earning him worldwide fame almost overnight. By the 1920s, Jackie's face was everywhere. Toys, lunchboxes, even fashion trends for little boys carried his name. He was earning millions, more than $60 million in today's money, a fortune that should have set him up for life. But there was one problem. Jackie never saw a dime of it. When he turned 21, expecting to finally touch his hard-earned money, Jackie discovered a devastating truth. His mother and stepfather had blown through his fortune on mansions, jewelry, and luxury cars. Of the millions he had made as a child star, only about $126,000 remained. Jackie's heartbreak turned into a bitter legal battle against his own family, a fight that shocked America and exposed the ugly side of child stardom. But his tragedy led to change. The case inspired California to pass the Coogan Law, requiring that a portion of a child actor's earnings be set aside in a trust they can actually access as adults. To this day, every young actor working in Hollywood benefits from Jackie's painful experience. Jackie continued acting into adulthood, though he never regained the fame of his childhood years. Still, a whole new generation met him decades later when he re-emerged as the lovable but creepy Uncle Fester in the Addams Family. It wasn't the glamorous Hollywood career he once had, but it proved he could still leave a lasting mark on pop culture. Jackie Coogan may have changed Hollywood law forever, but another child star stunned the world by walking away from it all voluntarily, at the very peak of her fame, and her disappearance remains one of the most shocking in movie history. In the late 1930s, Deanna Durbin wasn't just a star, she was a lifeline. Her voice and charm saved Universal Pictures from bankruptcy, and by her early 20s, she was one of the highest-paid women in America. To fans, she looked unstoppable. But behind the image of the sweet girl next door, Deanna was miserable. Hollywood had trapped her in a role she didn't want, forcing her into a life that felt fake and suffocating. And then she did something almost unthinkable. At just 27, Deanna walked away from it all. She left Hollywood, moved to France, and disappeared from public life completely. For more than 60 years, she refused interviews, rejected comeback offers, and never returned to the spotlight. To younger generations, she became a ghost of old Hollywood, a star who simply vanished. Her rare explanation was simple: I was never happy in Hollywood. No amount of money was worth losing my life. Deanna chose peace over fame, making her disappearance one of the boldest in Hollywood history. These are just a few of the secrets Hollywood never wanted you to know. If you want more shocking stories like this, go ahead and subscribe, that way you'll be the first to hear them. But while Deanna stepped away by choice, others never got that chance. Some lives ended far too soon, and Brandon DeWild's story is one of them. In 1953, a single line etched Brandon DeWild's name into movie history. Playing young Joey and Shane, he called out to the departing cowboy, "Come back, Shane." That one moment became one of the most iconic scenes in cinema, and it earned Brandon an Academy Award nomination at just 11 years old. Unlike many child stars, Brandon seemed to have what it took to grow beyond childhood fame. He landed strong roles in films like HUD with Paul Newman, and on television he continued to shine. Critics saw him as more than just a child star. They saw real talent, and his future looked limitless. But in 1972, fate had other plans. While driving near Denver, Colorado, Brandon lost control of his car and crashed into a construction vehicle. He was only 30 years old. A career that seemed destined for greatness was gone in an instant. Fans were left wondering what might have been. Would Brandon have become one of the great actors of his generation? We'll never know. His legacy remains frozen in that unforgettable cry for Shane to return, a haunting reminder of a brilliant career cut short. But if Brandon's story shows the fragility of life, another child star's tale reveals just how brutal Hollywood itself could be, starting with one of the youngest megastars in movie history, Baby Peggy. Before Shirley Temple, there was Baby Peggy, the first true child megastar of Hollywood. Between the ages of 4 and 6, she made more than 150 short films, earning over $1 million a year, the equivalent of more than $20 million today. Her face was on merchandise, she received mountains of fan mail, and for a brief moment, she was one of the most famous children in the world. But behind the fame was a nightmare. Her father, who managed her career, forced her to work exhausting hours with no education and no friends her age. When she cried on set, Crew members were told to hold ice cubes to her face until she stopped. Despite all the money she brought in, she never saw a dime. Her family spent it all. By the age of 7, her career collapsed after her father clashed with producers. Overnight, the fortune was gone, and baby Peggy was finished. To survive, her family pushed her into vaudeville shows, but the magic never returned. By her teenage years, she was so desperate to escape her past that she legally changed her name to Diana Sarah Carey. For decades, she lived in obscurity, working ordinary jobs, far removed from her days as a global icon. But in her later years, she reclaimed her story, writing books, speaking out about child exploitation, and becoming a respected historian. She lived to 101, passing away in 2020 as the last surviving star of the silent era. Her story is one of the most shocking reminders of how Hollywood chews up children, and how survival sometimes means finding your voice long after the spotlight fades. But while baby Peggy eventually found peace, another child star from our gang never escaped his demons. Scotty Beckett's life spiraled from fame to scandal and ended in mystery. With his sideways cap and mischievous grin, Scotty Beckett was one of the most beloved kids in our gang, better known as the Little Rascals. He charmed audiences through the 1930s and even managed to land roles as the younger versions of stars like Spencer Tracy and Frederick March. For a while, it looked like Scotty would be one of the rare child stars who successfully grew into adult roles. But his personal life told a different story. When his father died during Scotty's teens, it sent him into a spiral he never fully recovered from. He began drinking heavily, abusing prescription drugs, and showing up in the news for all the wrong reasons. Arrests for drunk driving, forgery, and public fights quickly replaced glowing headlines about his talent. Hollywood, once eager to cast him, now wanted nothing to do with him. By the late 1950s, Scotty's career was over. His name, once tied to laughter and family entertainment, became associated with chaos and trouble. Multiple marriages failed, his health declined, and his reputation made him virtually unemployable. Then came the darkest chapter. In 1968, Scotty checked into a nursing home after a mysterious beating. 2 days later, he was found dead at just 38 years old. The official cause was listed as an overdose, but the circumstances remain suspicious to this day. Some say it was accidental, others believe it was deliberate, but the truth has never been fully uncovered. Scotty Beckett's story is a haunting reminder of how quickly fame can turn toxic. From the smiling rascal adored by millions to a man broken by addiction and bad choices, his fall shows just how dangerous early stardom can be. But if Scotty's story was marked by chaos, another child star's tale revealed an even darker truth, not just personal struggles, but abuse happening right behind the scenes. And that was the reality for Jay North, the original Dennis the Menace. In the early 1960s, no child was more recognizable than Jay North. With his striped shirt, overalls, and trademark cowlick, he became America's mischievous little troublemaker in Dennis the Menace. To fans, he looked like every kid's dream, playful, funny, and full of life. But behind the cheerful smile, Jay was living a very different reality. On set, Jay was under the strict control of his aunt and uncle, who acted as his guardians. Instead of protecting him, they reportedly subjected him to harsh discipline and psychological abuse. He was threatened with punishment if he didn't perform perfectly, forced to smile and laugh on cue even when he was miserable. What audiences saw as fun and lighthearted comedy was, for Jay, a nightmare. When Dennis the Menace ended in 1963, Jay was only 12, but his career quickly faltered. He was typecast as the rambunctious troublemaker and struggled to find roles as he grew older. Hollywood, which had once plastered his face across magazines, suddenly had no place for him. By his 20s, Jay had left acting completely, even taking work as a corrections officer, about as far from the spotlight as you can get. The damage, though, had already been done. For years, Jay wrestled with depression and anger over the abuse he endured and the lost childhood he could never get back. Later in life, he began speaking openly about his experiences, exposing the darker side of Hollywood's treatment of children and pushing for better protections. Today, Jay lives a quiet life, occasionally appearing at nostalgia conventions. While he never escaped the shadow of Dennis, his courage in telling the truth about his painful past gave his fame a new purpose, turning his childhood suffering into a warning for others. Jay's honesty shed light on hidden abuse, but another child star's journey shows a different path, one that blended fame, music, and television before quietly fading away. That was the life of Johnny Crawford, the young star of The Rifleman. In the late 1950s, millions of viewers tuned in every week to watch The Rifleman, and alongside Chuck Connors as the tough frontier dad was young Johnny Crawford as his son Mark McCain. Over 5 seasons, audiences watched Johnny grow from a boy into a young man, making him one of the most recognizable child actors of the TV Western era. But Johnny's talent didn't stop at acting. In the early 1960s, he launched a music career that surprised many. Songs like Cindy's Birthday even reached the Billboard Top 40, showing he wasn't just a TV star, he had the charm to be a teen idol too. As he grew older though, Hollywood's interest faded. Johnny picked up occasional roles in shows like Hawaii Five-0 and appeared in guest spots, but he never regained the massive fame of his Rifleman years. Instead, he leaned into his love of music, performing with vintage dance bands well into adulthood. In later years, Johnny faced declining health after being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. He passed away in 2021 at 75, remembered fondly as both an actor and musician. For many fans, he'll always be the loyal son of the Rifleman, a role that captured the heart of an entire generation. While Johnny found fulfillment in music, another Disney favorite took a very different path, one that led him behind the camera far from the spotlight. That was Kevin Corcoran. In the 1950s and 60s, Kevin Corcoran was Disney's favorite son. With his freckles and boundless energy, he became the face of childhood in classics like Old Yeller, Swiss Family Robinson, and The Shaggy Dog. To audiences, he was the perfect kid brother, mischievous, lovable, and unforgettable. Unlike many child stars, Kevin had the rare backing of Walt Disney himself, who cast him repeatedly and shaped his image. Fans adored him, but Kevin was smart enough to realize that child stardom rarely lasts. Instead of chasing the spotlight as he got older, he stepped away. After studying theater arts, Kevin made a surprising but successful pivot to life behind the camera. He worked as an assistant director and later as a producer on shows like Baywatch, Quantum Leap, and Murder, She Wrote. His career behind the scenes lasted longer and proved far more stable than his time in front of the camera, a rare Hollywood success story. Kevin passed away in 2015 at age 66, leaving behind a legacy that spanned 2 Hollywood careers. First, as the beloved Disney kid every fan remembered, and later, as a respected figure who guided productions from behind the lens. He proved that for some child stars, the brightest future isn't in staying on screen, it's in reinventing yourself completely. From Shirley Temple's graceful second act to Bobby Driscoll's tragic downfall, the lives of these child stars show both the magic and the cruelty of Hollywood. Some walked away on their own terms. Others were broken by the very industry that once celebrated them. Their stories remind us that fame, especially at a young age, is never simple. For some, it opened doors to new beginnings. For others, it was the beginning of the end. So maybe the real question is this: was childhood stardom a blessing or a curse?